Peter Griffin, man, myth, legend, owner of the Peter Copter. But every legend has, well, its legend. And so today we're looking at Peter Griffin's entire story from start to end. And where better to start this story than at the very beginning, as in Padre de Familia, we see the birth of the future Family Guy.
I went to Mexico to terminate my pregnancy, but God had other plans, and you were born right there.
Considering Peter's whole life is full of happy accidents, it only makes sense that he's one himself. The episode kicks off with the Griffins attending a Veterans Day parade, with Peter getting hit right in the patriotic gland after a riveting musical performance by Herbert, complete with a children's choir, because why wouldn't you trust that man with a massive group of kids?
Anybody want to see my purple heart?
I don't know how he managed to make a purple heart sound phallic, but golly goober, he did it. The next day, Peter's USA parade is in full swing, with him even trying to get his family in on the homeland love, though with this being how he shows his appreciation of the country, I can't blame them for not wanting to get involved.
If you're not from here, God's gonna hunt you down and give you AIDS.
At least the troops liked it. Later at the clam, Peter overhears a couple of employees speaking in Portuguese, which gets him heated over illegal immigrants coming into the country and taking jobs. He signs the boys up for border patrol and gets rid of anything Speedy Gonzales related in his house, and even brings his anti-immigration stance to the workplace, where he tries to get one of his foreign employees fired. He convinces his boss to enact a citizenship check and heads to his mom's place to pick up his birth certificate. One issue.
You weren't born in America. You were born in Mexico.
What?
Hey, you know how it is. One day you're wearing an American flag suit, the next day you find out you're an unwanted baby and an illegal immigrant to boot. As an illegal immigrant, Peter ends up getting fired from his job, and the only way he can get his cash back is by passing a citizenship test. And for Peter, that's a lot harder than you'd think.
Complete this sentence. The land of the free and the home of the blank.
Home of the Whopper?
I mean, he isn't wrong. Honestly, they should at least give him partial credit for that one. Needless to say, Peter fails the exam and is forced to look for a new job. When his new gig as a maid for a motel doesn't work out, he tries out nannying instead, though I don't think he's got the right build for that one. Those floating umbrellas should really label their weight limits to prevent tragedies like this from happening again. Out of options, Lois calls in someone who she knows employs immigrants with no issues. Her dad, Mr. Pewtersmith, offers Peter a job at his mansion and even allows his family to stay there for as long as they need, though the accommodations aren't top-notch, to say the least.
This isn't so bad.
We're sharing a tool shed with 7 other families.
Crowded? Sure. But honestly, it looks like they're having a lot of fun. In fact, Peter even starts to get in on the fun, embracing his Mexican heritage by celebrating Cinco de Mayo. His fun is interrupted by Carter pretty quickly, though, who tells everyone to get back to work. Thankfully, Peter finally realizes the truth about America and decides to stand up for what's right.
Immigrants built this country, and I say it's time for us to take it back.
Could you say whole speech again in Spanish?
You know, it's the thought that counts. Despite the language barrier, Peter starts a revolution and marches right up to Mr. Pewtersmith's door. Carter offers Peter a deal to get him citizenship, but Peter insists he wants all of his employees to be granted citizenship. Unfortunately, Carter won't change the deal.
Peter, you must go.
I'll never forget you, Gerardo. Boy, I sure am gonna miss Ronaldo.
Names are hard. It's a thought that wait, I just said that. Though even though he was born in Mexico, in the episode of Peter's Two Dads, we find out that his bloodstream screams a bit more green than anything else. I always thought Peter seemed a bit luckier than most. The episode starts with the family figuring out it's Meg's birthday next week, meaning they've got to plan a party ASAP. Thankfully, they managed to put something together at the last minute and even get a ton of folks to show up. Meg's friends, Peter's dad, and even Quagmire.
So which one of you wants to lose your virginity?
I don't even know if this man is permitted in school zones. He should be far away from here. Anywho, the party as a whole is kind of a disaster, with Peter deciding to show up drunk and dressed as a clown for the sake of entertainment, and I know you shouldn't be driving a car while drunk, but what about a unicycle?
This is gonna blow you guys away.
Grandpa! Somebody call an ambulance!
Alright, that answers my question. At the hospital, Grandpa Griffin's injuries are far too severe for him to survive, but just before he passes away, he leaves Peter with some final words.
Peter, you're a fat, stinking drunk.
Well, I mean, he did just kill the man. I honestly don't blame him. With those words haunting his thoughts, Peter decides that booze is the real killer of his father, and so he pledges that from henceforth, he's gonna stay off the bottle for good.
Peter, what are you doing?
Crack?
What the
Hey, at least I'm not drinking, Brian.
Stick to the bottle! Stick to the bottle! Brian suggests that Peter finds what drives him to drinking in the first place, and after a visit to a therapist, he figures out that Francis Griffin wasn't his real father. He visits his mom's place to ask who his real father is, and she explains that she met a young man named Mickey McFinnigan on a trip to Ireland. Right then and there, it's settled. Peter's heading to Ireland to meet his father right away. One plane ride later, and Peter and Brian are ready to hit the Shamrock Trails. Stereotypes, huh? The two head for McSwiggan Village to find Peter's father and quickly find out that he's the town drunk. Though in Ireland, that's a good thing.
Top of the morning, laddies. Let me cut you an Irish rose.
If that man isn't Peter Griffin's father, then nobody is. Bafflingly, Mickey says the two can't be related despite the obvious similarities, so Peter decides he needs to prove he's related the only way he knows how, by out-drinking him. Yep, so much for that promise earlier. The drinking contest goes about as well as you'd expect it to go. But hey, Peter's liver failed after Mickey's, so that means he beat him. Mickey finally accepts him as his son, and the whole bar celebrates with a classic Irish jig.
Looks like a railroad map, and he never shuts his freaking trap. But all the ladies catch the clap from your drunken Irish dad.
Because what else would you do when you find out you're related to a drunk? But alright, now that we got Peter's heritage out of the way, let's jump ahead a couple of years and figure out how he met his better half in the episode, Death Lives.
I love looking at stars.
Say no more.
Peter, wait,
Very interesting.
Oh my God!
Absolutely irresistible. How could you not marry someone who can do that? It's Peter and Lois' anniversary tomorrow, but Peter's got other plans than to spend the day with his wife, instead opting to play golf with Quagmire, leaving Lois a scavenger hunt he put together at the last minute to keep her distracted the entire time. However, it starts raining right in the middle of his golf session, and with a metal putt in hand, I'm sure he'll be fine, right?
You again?
Well, it's no surprise Peter has come face to face with death on multiple occasions. However, Death tells Petey that this is only a near-death experience, that his real death date will be 2 years after Lois divorces him. Peter is baffled to even hear that Lois would think about divorce, and so Death shows him their humble beginnings as a couple, starting out with celebrity belly impressions in a park that quickly turned into a makeout sesh on a freeway. Well, despite their love literally causing a car crash, at least they're happy.
I love you, Lois Pewterschmidt.
I love you, Peter Griffin.
There's no way she's gonna leave me.
I feel like the first I love yous being paired with flames and death is kind of a bad omen for the future of the relationship, but anywho, Death tells Peter that he can't get Peter out of limbo until he has a revelation, meaning he's gotta keep reliving their history until he finds a reason to change. An epiphany, if you will. Kinda giving me Simpsons movie vibes here. Peter's next memory is the first time he met Lois's father, and after Peter starts a conversation about how Carter's flesh balloons generate top-tier juice, Carter does the only sensible thing he can do. There's overprotective parenting, and then there's tossing an unfit suitor into the ocean to drown. But hey, as bad as things may seem, when Peter's picked up by a Navy aircraft carrier, he ends up meeting a future friend for the very first time.
Ensign Glenn Quagmire, welcome aboard.
No two words go better together than Quagmire and seaman. I'll see myself out now. With Peter not picking up on the fact that he needs a change, Death decides he doesn't want to help someone else get a girl when even he can't get one, which gives Peter the brilliant idea to be his wingman.
Get you a little fixed up, you know, get your haircut, give you good clean. Shave, maybe some cologne. The chicks will be all over you.
Yikes. I think he's got a rough task ahead of him here, but still, looking back at Peter's memories, Death sees just how much love can affect you, with Peter's connection to Lois overpowering Quagmire's offer of cheap hookups. Meanwhile, Lois is starting to pick up on the issues of the scavenger hunt after it sent her to the sewers.
Mom, you remember that goldfish we flushed down the toilet? He wasn't dead.
Brother, this anniversary has gone down the drain. Back to Peter and his memories, though. After coming ashore, he hitchhikes and coincidentally runs into another future friend, Cleveland. He gets him to give him a ride to Rhode Island to return to Lois, but has to go through South Carolina to get there, which,
Holy crap! Do you see what I see?
I'm afraid I do.
We're being chased by ghosts!
I wish they were ghosts, Peter. Luckily, things are better for the current day Peter, as he manages to get Death a date with the girl he likes, and then we cut back to Peter's past one more time when he finally gets back to the Peter Schmidt's mansion. He crawls through a window and accidentally runs into Carter, who offers him a crisp $1 million to stay away from his daughter.
No deal. Lois may be worth $1 million to you, but to me, she's worthless.
He's no wordsmith, but he's a good husband when he gives Lois the time of day. Present Peter realizes this too, asking Death to send him back home so he can give Lois the proper gift for their anniversary. After finding out about Peter's golfing, Lois manages to make a deranged dash to give him a piece of her mind, but stops just in time to see Peter smiling and listening to their favorite song being played live. The two hug, and love is in the air once more, except for Death.
You can't hug your children with nuclear arms.
Check, please.
Hey, not every date's gonna lead to a romance like Peter and Lois's. But real quick, there's one super important moment in Peter and Lois's marriage that we cannot forget to look over in the episode Meet the Quagmires. Through a complicated series of events, Peter ends up changing history after going back in time and ditching Lois on a date. In this new timeline, it ends up being Quagmire who marries Lois.
Let's go upstairs and do it.
Okay.
Lovely. Turns out the exact moment that Lois fell in love with Peter was at the country club dance that Peter ditched that night, with a kiss sealing the deal for good. In the end, Peter gets a chance to fix his mistakes, heading to the dance and knocking Quagmire out before he can steal his girl.
Lois Pewterschmidt, will you be my wife?
Yes, I will.
And there it is, the kiss that started it all. Oh, and Peter may have accidentally started a rivalry with a certain feathered fella at this dance as well.
Whoa, big guy. You're probably never even gonna see him again.
Whoever that kid is, he's never been more wrong about anything in his entire life than right there. So what exactly did Peter and Lois's wedding look like? Well, according to the episode Peter and Lois's Wedding, it looked a lot like a Friends episode.
There were originally 9 friends, but 3 of them died of pneumonia. Don't let Monica get Botox.
Yeah, that joke just did not age well for a million different reasons. The Friends fans are furious right now. The episode starts with the Wi-Fi going down to the Griffin household, but instead of retelling the Star Wars trilogy, Peter gets the idea to retell the story of how he and Lois got married. Apparently, after college, Peter moved in with Quagmire in Cleveland, while Lois moved in with 2 Bonnies. All right. Good news, though. Quagmire got a promotion at Blockbuster.
This calls for a fountain dance.
Man, I could go for a good fountain dance with my friends right about now. If only I had any. Moving on, Lois explains that during this time, Peter and herself had agreed to take a break from dating, but remain close friends, meaning her dad set up some backup bachelors for her, with the favorite being Tom Tucker. Meanwhile, the guys start to realize something.
Peter, you're still in love with Lois.
Yeah, every time you see her, you go swing. The sound of being lifted by a, I think.
I mean, I've never heard my junk make any noise like that, but this is Quagmire, so I feel like I have to trust him when it comes to these things. Peter realizes the guys are right, deciding to save up enough money to buy a ring and propose to Lois. One issue, she's already engaged to Tom Tucker. I'd be surprised, but when the man can do this, can you blame her? To be forever. Those hips don't lie, man. Despite Tom's flexibility, Lois isn't swayed and ends up falling for Peter all over again after he makes her a mixtape. She tells Carter that she wants to marry Peter instead, and he's surprisingly understanding, even setting up a bachelor party for him at an MTV beach house. This can't possibly be a ruse. Surprisingly, even Joe was at this party, but the boys just never ran into him.
I was pretty much the coolest guy there. There were these other idiots there having a bachelor party, but I didn't know them. They were losers.
Seeing Joe with functioning legs always scares me. At the party, Carter pays off the hottest girl of the 90s, Daisy Fuentes, to try and smooth talk Peter, and sure enough.
But the next thing I knew, I was kissing Daisy Fuentes. And it was on national television.
In the mud and everything. Kinda unhygienic. Lois catches their kiss on TV and chucks Peter's mixtape into the ocean. That one can never see Peter ever again. With Peter out, Tom Tucker's back in, and the wedding is coming in hot. Peter overhears the wedding while partying with the guys and heads off as quickly as possible.
So I decided to get there the way everyone got around in the 90s. Propelled by an explosion.
Peter crashes the wedding and blasts himself and Lois into the corner so they can talk privately. He admits he's always loved her, and even Daisy Fuentes shows up and admits Carter paid her to kiss Peter. Lois falls for Peter one more time and starts to hightail it out of the church, but this is the 90s, so he needs some unnecessary action.
There's something about punching someone in a church that just feels good.
To cap things off, Peter decides to buck out a baseball stadium to host Lois and his wedding, but he kind of got a screwy deal as it took place right in the middle of a game. He catches a game-winning hit that cost the Red Sox their championship, and the crowd boos him out of the stadium. Even Lois ain't a fan.
I was having serious regrets about my decision, but was already pregnant with Meg, so there was no backing out.
Yeah, now that's a grim indicator of how their marriage will turn out. Though if you know anything about Peter Griffin, you know he's got a mortal enemy that he's destined to be intertwined in a struggle with until the end of time. And no, I'm not talking about Meg. I'm talking about a giant bastard of a bird. So how did Peter's feud with Ernie the giant chicken begin? Well, it all kicked off after he was handed a coupon outside the supermarket.
I'm sorry, this is expired.
You son of a...
A feud for the ages all started over a $1.20 in savings. Makes sense. And when I say ages, I do mean it. This fight stretches across land, air, and sea, time, and finally through an office building, where the two tumble out of a window to the concrete below. And from then until the end of time, this chicken would forever be the bane of Peter's existence. But alright, here's a pop quiz for you. What was Peter's first job of the series? Did you say toy factory inspector? Well, I wouldn't blame you if you don't remember, as Peter ends up losing his gig there for good in the episode of Mr. Saturday Night.
I bet you're just one of those low-level assembly line guys who stand there all day screwing heads on dolls.
Why, you little snot-nosed...
Mr. Griffin!
You'd think kids would be into hearing about toy factories. After a rough time at Chris's career day, Peter tells Lois he's unsatisfied with his position at work, so she gives him the idea to invite Mr. Weed, yes that's his real name, over for dinner, and surprisingly he accepts. That night, Lois pushes Peter to try and get a raise, though she may need to be even more assertive.
Peter, don't you have something to say to Mr. Weed?
Mr. Weed, I don't care what the guys at work say. I never thought you were an effeminate weirdo.
Okay, as awful as that was, the rest of the dinner actually went surprisingly well, with Lois cooking a great meal and the general family atmosphere making Mr. Weed feel for Peter. He offers a major raise to Pete, and the rest of the table is shocked, especially Brian, who starts choking on his food.
He's dead.
Talk about a roller coaster of a night, highest of highs to the lowest of lows. At Mr. Weed's funeral, Peter insists that his raise was sealed by verbal contract. Maybe not the best time to be arguing that, but I digress. Mr. Weed's video will is read aloud by his lawyer, where we quickly learn that his wish is for his factory to be torn down and turned into a health center.
The demolition will begin in now.
Well, any chance of getting a raise was just buried by that rubble. Peter starts looking for a new job, but struggles quite a bit. He fails at being an air dryer, a deaf guy, and worst of all...
Hey, looking for a good time, sweet cheeks?
Peter, get in the car!
Okay, but it'll cost you. What do you want, a Cleveland steamer?
I feel like I need to cut out my eyes, cut off my ears, and for good measure, cut off my tongue. I will now be jobless. Thankfully, Lois comes in the clutch, saying that she saved enough money from teaching piano lessons to cover life expenses for a bit and give Peter a chance to work towards his dream job at becoming a Renaissance fair jouster. What? Getting stabbed in the chest and trampled by horses every night doesn't sound fun to you? Actually, though, Peter has some reason to his dream here, as the Black Knight of the Fair once saved him from what could have been a fatal fall. Peter shows up to his first day of training and is quickly introduced by his drill sergeant to
the Black Knight himself! And this is his trophy winch!
People say chivalry is dead nowadays. It's been dead since medieval times, man. The next day at practice during lunchtime, the maiden of the Black Knight starts coming on to Peter a tad, and Peter might be a bit too dense to realize the meaning behind her old English.
Wouldst thou take a gander underneath my frock?
There you go. She's freaking perverts.
After that display, the Black Knight banishes Peter from coming to the fair, meaning his dream is now dead again. Peter heads to watch the jousting the next day for some closure, but when the Black Knight yells at him from the field and calls him a fizzle, he gets the courage he needs to stand up to his hero-turned-bully. He hops on his steed and jousts towards his certain demise. Fortunately...
to the owner of a yellow Hyundai, your car is being towed.
What? I won!
He should have just ridden his horse to the fair if he wanted to prevent that. Though even after an offer to joust around the country, Peter opts to give up jousting as he's finally accomplished his dream. Though that also leaves Peter with no job, so where does he go from here? Well, Peter finally scores a stable gig about a season later in the episode Jungle Love, and it's fair to say that it's his absolute dream job.
Welcome to free Pawtucket Ale. We just ask that you don't drink during your shift.
That won't be a problem, sir.
2 seconds later.
What happened to your pants?
Oh, look who's here.
I'm just saying, if it's really his dream job, he should at least wait until his orientation is over. The episode starts with Lois kicking Peter out of the house and forcing him to finally go get a job. He heads over to the unemployment office and hands over his list of gigs he feels he's suited for. And they're exactly what you'd expect.
Cowboy, astronaut, warlock, more powerful astronaut.
I can see cowboy, but the rest, actually, Homer Simpson's been an astronaut. Let's put that down as a maybe for Peter. Anyway, there's a job opening at the Pawtucket Brewery, and sure enough, Peter snags it.
Finally, I'm one of those guys who can't wait to get to work in the morning. Like a dairy cow.
Ah! Oh, yes!
So Peter heads into his first shift and quickly takes advantage of the free beer he gets. He's basically drunk 24/7 as a job now, and you already know that's going to cause his family life to crumble.
Oh my God.
Hey, Meg, you see my pants? Oh, Lois, by the way, we're out of toilet paper.
I'm scarred for life just watching this scene. Thankfully, Peter's boss steps in and says that his drinking has gotten out of hand, even demoting him to the shipping department where there's no free drinks. Peter's new bosses are Angela and this guy, Opie.
He is a burden of the state. He is your superior.
Peter's less competent than a guy who only speaks gibberish. Offensive, but checks out. Sure enough, that job is a Peter Griffin staple for the rest of the series. But speaking of Peter Griffin staples, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk of another Peter Griffin staple, his favorite song.
Well, a bird, 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 the bird is the word. Hey, guy behind the counter, the bird is the word. Hey, frightened little child, the bird is the word.
You may be the only person in the entirety of Rhode Island who still likes that song. The episode starts with the Griffins heading to a 50s-style diner and taking in all the sights, the celebrities, the polio, and the jukeboxes. Peter in particular has a frackin' awakening when he hears his favorite song by the Trashmen. You already know what it is. It's Surfin' Bird.
Oh, well, a bird, 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 but bird's a word. Oh, well, a bird, 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 well, a bird is a word.
Just think, without this scene, we wouldn't have had this Fortnite emote 17 years later. What world would we be living in then? The diner actually ends up almost tossing the record for the song, as it's technically from the 60s, but Peter nabs it right before they do and takes it home for himself. Easy to say, it quickly gets on the nerves of everyone in the Griffin household.
Oh, have you not heard? It was my understanding that everyone had heard.
Heard what?
Brian, don't!
Oh, well, a bird, bird, bird.
Come on, Brian, you're better than that. You walked right into that one. So Peter keeps singing and singing and singing and singing and singing and singing, and eventually Brian and Stewie cannot take it anymore. They sneak into Peter's bedroom while he's sleeping, steal the Surfin' Bird record, and do what must be done. The only way I'd be any happier is if that was a 100 gex record, but luckily those guys aren't popular enough to have one. Suck it! After realizing his most prized possession is missing, Peter heads to a used record store to see if they have any extra copies of Surfin' Bird, but finds a guy behind the counter who looks way too similar to Jesus to be a coincidence. And yeah, he definitely is. The second Peter threatens to piss on some Christian music, he cracks. And boy, with the Son of God back and roaming the earth, you'd think Peter would treat this moment with the seriousness it deserves, but...
You've returned! You've returned to bring us the good word!
What word?
Oh, well, a bird, bird, bird.
Can't say I'm surprised. Peter invites Jesus over for dinner, and he's a massive hit with the whole family, except for Brian, who's a tad skeptical at first, atheist and all that.
Can you perform miracles? Sure. How about this?
I love you, Jesus.
Oh, I love you too, fella.
Well, I guess that's why he rose on Sunday. After some more miracles, Jesus decides it's best he ought to head home and gets ready for his next shift at the record store, but Peter says that he ought to come out of hiding and solve the world's problems. Jesus decides to go along with Peter's plan and outs himself the second he steps onto water. So Jesus quickly becomes a celebrity, getting a spot on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno and striking poses on the covers of all the biggest magazines. Hey, remember those? Jesus becomes so big that he even lands a reading at the MTV Movie Awards, but to say fame changed him would be an understatement.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here with you 6 interchangeable women. Last time I only hung around with one.
The Messiah would make jokes like that, wouldn't he? But as if that's not bad enough, he even ditches Peter in favor of a frickin' cow for a night on the town. Peter tries calling his friend the next day, but realizes he's brushing him off to party.
None of this would have happened if somebody hadn't stolen my Surfin' Bird record!
It all comes back to the bird. It is the word, after all, from what I've heard. The next day, Peter finds out that Jesus has been arrested, and against his better judgment, he heads over to bail him out. Jesus admits that he may just need to disappear again and try coming back in another 1,000 years, but leaves Peter with a special something before he goes. Take a wild guess as to what that is.
What, you haven't heard?
Crap!
well, a bird. A bird's a word, well, a bird.
So we've covered the past, we've covered the present, and now it's time to look to the future. And in the episode Stu and Stewie's Excellent Adventure, we get just that.
How's the arthritis?
Not bad. Of course, since you walked in, I'm feeling a little stiff. Giggity. Oh, I just pooped a little.
I just hope Peter's life is better than Quagmire's. The episode kicks off after Stewie runs into a guy who looks suspiciously like himself but older. Turns out it's an older Stewie who's on vacation into the past, and apparently that's just a thing you can do in the future. Right before Stewie heads home, baby Stewie latches on and hitchhikes his way to the future, where the little fella is amazed he hasn't taken over the world yet. Two Stewies head home, and little Stewie gets another dose of reality.
Oh, Stu, my big boy.
Hello, Mother. She's still alive?
No world domination, and he hasn't taken out Lois yet? Is this the future or hell? The hits keep on coming too, with Meg coming home as Ron after getting a sex change, and Chris having a wife named Vanessa. Peter's into her as well.
Don't you look nice? Oh, I broke my hip.
You need some help, Dad?
Nah, I'm good.
30 years later, and he's still not afraid to cheat on Lois right in front of her. Over dinner, Vanessa asks Stu, aka older Stewie, if she thinks that they should put Peter and Lois in a retirement home, but he ends up dodging the question. Kinda a tough one to answer right on the fly. After dinner though, Stu brings Stewie home to his crummy apartment and takes him to work the next day, where Stewie meets Fran, Stu's co-worker. Stu and Fran seem to get along well, but Stewie takes his assumptions a step too far when he assumes that they're dating.
Stewie, I've never slept with any woman. I've never had...
I mean, yeah, being 30-something and still a virgin is, I mean, if that's your choice, that's your choice, but something tells me that's not his choice. So yeah, a little sad. Not like I know anything about that life either, though. Meanwhile, Ron and Chris confront Peter and Lois about putting them in a home, and to Peter, it doesn't really sound that bad.
She says they have people there who will wipe your bottom.
That is sweet. And it doesn't sound ridiculous at all, Meg.
Hey, look, any chance to avoid manual labor, no matter how small, is always a win for us lazy folks. I get you, Peter. Back at Stu's place, Stewie has Fran over and puts old Stu on the spot to have to her right then and there. She's super on board for the idea and heads off to get ready, but Stu doesn't even seem to know the first thing about doing.
You march in there right now and insert your into her.
I would hope that Stewie doesn't know how that works, considering he definitely has not been taught it at school at his age. But Stu, like, I mean, surely you know something. Now get this, Stu actually does it for a whole 8 seconds. Impressive, right? And to make matters worse, he gets fired the next day because his work doesn't allow workplace relationships. And to make those matters even worse, his apartment burns down. On the bright side, at the retirement home, Peter and Lois have already got friends there waiting for him.
Hey, Joe, how are things since the operation?
Oh, great, Peter. I sure do miss Bonnie, though.
Well, it's amazing they were able to give you her legs.
I wear short shorts!
Again, Joe with the leg scares me. Back to Stu and Stewie. Stu admits that despite the recent events going on, he's sort of ruined his own life by not taking any risks after a near-death experience in his youth. Wanting to change history, Stewie decides to go back in time to prevent this from happening, and sure enough, he does just that. Meaning this version of Peter's future might not be entirely canon at this point, but hey, even if it is, I'd say he found it pretty freaking sweet. And that just about wraps up the entire Peter Griffin timeline. Though if you want any more Family Guy goodness, be sure to check out the video on the screen right now.